Hey there, Knicks fans. The NBA season does not let an injury rule out your bet. Other sportsbook let injuries box you out, but Fanatics Sportsbook's fair play protects all bets from first half injury. So if your player goes out with an injury, Fanatics keeps your bet on the court. Make the switch and get more ways to win with Fanatics Sportsbook. Winning, it's different here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, and it is time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time up in Toronto against the Raptors. Another trip to visit our good friends Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. I believe this is going to be one of the few games that all three, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and OG Anunoby, will be healthy for. I guess I'll check when I speak to my guest in just a second. The Knicks come into this matchup after one of their best wins of the season over the San Antonio Spurs, snapping their 11-game winning streak and improving to 39-22 on the season. And as of right now, they would be the 3 seed. And guess what team they would play? Actually, no, the Raptors are the 5 seed as of right now. But guess what team they could potentially play in the first round? That would be the Toronto Raptors. So we are looking at a potential preview of the first round matchup that could exist in the first round of the Eastern Conference this season. The Raptors come in to this game as one of the best success stories of the year. Now, obviously, there are levels to this. There's what the Pistons have been. There's been what the Celtics have been able to do. But a team that hadn't been over 500 since OG Anunoby was on the team has bounced back, and they're having one of their more successful seasons in their rebuild. So maybe they're even ahead of schedule. We'll see how their fan base feels. Joining me to talk about this matchup between the New York Knicks and the Toronto Raptors from the Great White North. You probably heard Fred Katz talking to him on Katz and Shoot, I guess at this point yesterday. Fun fact, it was as long as you heard. All 70 minutes that we talked about, I did not cut anything out of it, and yet it still continued afterwards as we were talking about baseball. Blake Murphy, welcome back to Knicks Film School, sir.
Thanks for having me, man. Great to be back. Great to be chatting with you again. I think last time we talked Bo Bichette going to the Mets.
We did.
So yeah, there's no way to avoid baseball coming up with me on basketball stuff, and there's no way to avoid basketball coming up with me if I do baseball stuff. This is what you get when you invite I almost said 2-sport athlete. I'm a 0-sport athlete, but a 2-sport yapper on. That's what you're in for.
Do you do any Maple Leaf coverage?
Not anymore. So back in my blog days, I did. And like, I grew up a hockey player. Hockey was like my whole life until I was like 15 or 16. And then it's like, oh, you're not going to make junior. They don't make defensemen who are 5'10" once you play contact. Then I started getting into other sports more. I did some Leaf blogging on my way up and some Vancouver Canucks blogging too. And then when I first got to Sportsnet, I was doing drive time shows. So I had a morning show and then an afternoon drive time show. So the Leafs were like the primary focus then. With Raptors and Jays just kind of more like seasonally or if the teams were good or whatever. But currently no Leaf stuff, which was nice for a little while because it's like then that can be the sport that I'm just a fan of. But I don't want to be a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. They're a disaster. So now they just barely exist to me this year.
Any Islanders fans that are listening will be very happy that the Maple Leafs are. There's still some Tavares.
Still holding the John Tavares. John Tavares he's the only Maple Leaf with a heartbeat. So
right.
You know, that's one part of this that I'll remain happy about. But
as a Rangers fan who lives down the road from UBS Arena, a building that my wife, anytime we drive past it on the Cross Island, we start booing it. We're in solidarity there. Okay, so don't worry. Let's talk about the NBA. Let's talk about basketball. As I mentioned at the top of the show, the Toronto Raptors. I'll just be honest. I did not have them projected this high. I said the play-in. I said that would, and like they still could end up in the play-in, but I thought if they finished with a 500 record, that would be successful. And we are sitting here 60 games into their season. They are 35-25. They would play the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, tell me the vibes in Toronto. Is it just happy to be here? Is it potentially like looking at this matchup against the Knicks as Like, we have a chance to get even higher in the conference. How are Raptors fans feeling these days?
Yeah, I think mostly it's positive. I think probably around the trade deadline, maybe the 2 weeks leading into it, there was a little bit of, well, they're overperforming and it's ahead of schedule and the East is wide open. Shouldn't you make your big move now? And obviously that didn't happen. No disrespect to Trace Jackson Davis. He is not the big move that's going to push you over the top. So I think, probably the average or the median opinion is this has been good. This is a little ahead of expectation, a little ahead of schedule. Personally, I had them pegged for 44 wins. I believe they're on pace for 48. So, I think I was on the more optimistic end of people who did projections, and even I came up a little light. So I think, that's the overall thing is, like, if you had come into this year and said the goal is to avoid the play-in, I think everyone would have said, that's reasonable. The bar's not too low. It's not too high. That's a great goal. I actually talked to Darko Rajakovic about this last week in Chicago, because he had said all year, if you asked him about the record, he's like, I'm not looking at the standings until after the All-Star break. So first practice after the All-Star break, I was in Chicago. And I'm like, okay, I get to ask you now. You looked at the standings, and he was pretty happy about it too, and said, had you told them before the season they'd be in 5th in the East, they'd have a 3-game cushion on the play-in, they would take that in a heartbeat. So I think that's, it's mostly positive. The reality, if you're the 5th best team in the Eastern Conference, is that there are some weaknesses to shore up still. There are some things you could be doing better. But certainly compared to the last couple of years, they're in a good spot, and it's a much more fun basketball team to watch day to day.
Sitting here at 16th in offense, but 7th in defense, which has become a bit of a talking point here in New York, because guess who's 8th?
Yeah.
The New York Knicks. Did not expect to be saying that a month ago when we were watching them figure out how to string stops together with the Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson pairing on the court for the majority of the game. So I know there's a portion of Knicks fans looking at this as, if we could run up the score and hold them to 90, like the last trip the Knicks made to Toronto, we could be a top 7 defense. I do know, as someone who's obviously been covering the Knicks for a while, seen their rise and the stages that you go through as like a sports fan and I guess a content creator, like, expectations just flat out change the more into your season that you're 10 games over 500. I mean, how have they changed for Raptors fans? What does a disappointing end to this season look like?
So, by the way, I will just point out to Knicks fans that if you want to feel differently about the defensive rankings, if we use cleaning the glass, which filters out garbage time, 6th and 12th are separated by 1 point per 100 possession. Mm-hmm. So we're all tied. It's there are the top 5 defenses, and then there's everyone else.
See, here's the problem. Here's the problem. I have to respond to that, because the Knicks have a 56-point win against the Nets. They have a 50 or 48 points win against the Sixers. Garbage time matters when we're talking about our defensive rating. I know you guys do go probably from a more 11th, fair one.
11th to 8th if you add garbage time back in, but we're also talking about like a fraction of a point. So anyway, so yeah, have expectations changed? Is that your question?
Yeah.
So again, like pre-deadline for some people, yes, like now's the time. The East is, because the hard thing with like the Raptors being on the upswing in their quote unquote rebuild is that their 5 starters are not like on the rookie scale. Everyone's getting paid. Everyone's into they're young. They have one of the youngest, if you weight by rotation minutes, they're one of the younger playoff teams in the league, but like everyone's getting paid. The cap sheet is not very flexible. Colin Murray-Boyles and Jacoby Walter are nice young pieces, and Colin Murray-Boyles I think could be like a real building block. But it's not like they're like flush with prospects or great. Like they're neutral for first round draft capital. So as far as like a rebuild goes, their cap sheet is not that of a rebuilding team. So there's a little bit of urgency in terms of expectations, like day to day and playoff wise. I think, if they slid into the play-in at this point, they have a 3.5 game cushion with 22 games to go. And they've gotten some good fortune with like which stars are sitting out against you and things like that. If they dropped back into the play-in, I think that would be disappointing. I think everyone would agree that they've done enough work to avoid that. And then if you look at the first round of the playoffs, I think if they lost a competitive series where they looked almost as good as the other team and the key pieces did what they were supposed to do, and you're just like, you're 1 year early or you're just a little bit short, you need one more rotation piece or something like that. You lose in 6 to the Knicks and play tough against them, and you're just like a guy or a year short, I think people would be fine with that. If you get pantsed, if you get swept by the Knicks or a gentleman's sweep, or the Cavs, who you're 3-0 against this year, if the Cavs punk you, something like that, then I think there would be a little bit of, well, okay, hold up. Was the goodness of this season like fake's not the right word, but like, was there a little bit of good fortune? Is this just a good regular season team? Because right now if you look at some of the stuff that could happen in the playoffs, and I know this is far from your question now, but some of the warning signs that are there when they don't play well are things that are going to come up in the playoffs, and they can feel like small things when you're 35-25, but if they become big things in a playoff series, you might look back on the season differently. So anyway, all that's to say, if they get bounced in the first round, but as the 5 or 6 seed, and it's a really competitive series, I think most people will be pretty happy with the season.
So there's elements and I guess layers to what you're talking about that like the Knicks have experienced recently. Yeah. The first round loss they had to the Hawks, the Julius Randle most improved player season. Like, you ask any Knicks fan, myself included, about that regular season, and it was like magical. We called it the We Here season. And they lost in 5 to the Hawks in the first round. And if you go to Basketball Reference, it's just a blip on any playoff radar. And yet the experience was not wasted of the, I guess back then, the 72 game, because of the pandemic shortened season. The 72 game regular season was time well spent. And I think, like, you obviously, because you cover baseball, understand this even more so. Like, if you get a fun regular season, that should matter. Even if you lose in like the wild card round and the division round, like those,
especially after 2 tanking seasons where your February through April was watching like Orlando Robinson, like
right. So that's where I come in, where I hate that stuff, where like a full 4.5, 6 month experience of enjoying your team or watch it. That was time well spent watching that 45 win season. Should not be ruined by a potentially bad 5 games. Having said that, I've talked to a lot of content creators throughout this season, Blake, and many a Cavs fan, many a Sixer fan, may have, and obviously a Celtics fan. We've all kind of looked at Toronto as, yeah, we'd be fine if that was the first round matchup. Not to say that like we're trying to end up playing Toronto. I don't think the Knicks will lose on purpose to drop to 4 so they play Toronto, but there seems to be this dismissal of the Raptors as a first round opponent. So now I talk to someone who is an expert perspective with the Raptors. Why should or shouldn't that be the perspective that these other franchises should have?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I wouldn't be dismissive of them because, again, they're 35-25. They play really well on the road. They play hard. And I don't know how much the good defense will hold up against the best offenses in a playoff series, but they're annoying. Like, it's a lot of help. It's a lot of like random double teams. It's a lot of pick up full court. Like, they're not going to be a fun team to play against, I don't think. Even if you're on talent, you have them topped. Now, where I think this comes from and where some of it's justified, other than the Cavaliers, the Raptors haven't really beat anyone good this year. They're like 4-14, I think, against the top 10 teams in the league. And if you look at top 10 in net rating instead of record, via cleaning the glass, I think it's like 6-14 or something like that, because a couple Miami games sneak in there. So they haven't shown they can do it. Like, look at the 3 Knicks games, right? A couple of those games happened when things were going well for the Raptors. And then the Knicks were kind of what the Raptors had won 9 in a row.
Yep.
And then lost to the Hornets in OT in what was a really bad game. And then the Knicks hammered them. And that was the start of like, they had a big losing streak coming out of that. They won 1 game and then lost a bunch in a row. So, and then the Knicks were a part of that losing streak as well in the NBA Cup game, where the Raptors made that second half comeback, and then the Knicks were like, little bro.
Yeah.
Little bro. And then the last time here, like, the Raptors were coming out of, they had won 4 straight on the West Coast, and then the Knicks just like flattened them again. So that's kind of not universally, because they have 3 wins against the Cavs from early in the season. They beat the Thunder in OKC before Shea went on the shelf. Like they have a couple times where they've looked good. And again, you don't win 4 in a row on a West Coast trip unless you're a good team. But every time they've run into the Knicks, the vibes were really high. And then the Knicks were like, okay, man, chill. And I think that that's kind of probably what the Celtics and the Knicks and the Cavs, I wouldn't be quite as chest out about it, because the Raptors are 3-0 against the Cavs. And I know that like regular season, the season series is not super predictive of playoff results. But like, when you look at some of how that happened and how the Raptors handled the dual bigs or Mobley, I don't know. I would, like, if I'm the Raptors right now, I would prefer Cleveland slightly to Boston or New York, is what I'll say. But also Boston and New York have beat them 3 times each. So anyway, how the Raptors, what they're doing holds up against good teams is a valid question. And the 3 meetings against the Knicks were really good reminders of that, because the Raptors came in riding high all 3 times. And the Knicks, like, again, with the exception of that pushback in the NBA Cup quarterfinal game that the Knicks then ran away, like they have not been competitive games. So that's probably what people are looking at and saying, like, yeah, the Raptors are good, but they're really feasting on that bottom of the Eastern Conference. They're really feasting on, hey, this team with a star out and things like that. They just don't have a lot of marquee wins against top teams in the league. Like, they just lost a really tough OKC Spurs back-to-back, both at home, both games where they blew it. Like, they got down, I think 25 to OKC, came back and then lost. The Spurs, they blew a double-digit fourth quarter lead. So that's kind of been the story when they play good teams. And if I'm a good team, that's probably what you're thinking about, right?
Yeah. That third Knicks Raptors game is actually a pivotal point of the Knicks season. So I'm not sure how much you followed like the consternation that Knicks fans have had.
Well, I remember that one. It was a huge conversation about like, what's wrong with Cat? How can't they? And then he had like 7 points, 18 rebounds or something like that in that game.
Yep. So about a week earlier, and if I remember right, in fact, I should just pull up the schedule here. About a week earlier, the Knicks played the Dallas Mavericks on MLK Jr. Day. It was a matinee at Madison Square Garden, and they got pantsed. Like, just one of the worst performances they had all season. And it was to a Mavericks team that had more money on their injured list, like $100 million on their injured list, basically. And like, that version of the Mavericks embarrassed the Knicks at MSG. 2 days later is the Brooklyn Nets game that I just mentioned, where they won 120-66 after everybody in the national media was now sharing in the outcry of the local media of like, what's wrong with this team? Why won't you take this seriously? That Mavericks game also dropped them to 2-9 in their last 11. Their next couple games were that Nets game. They beat the Sixers, but like Cat was in foul trouble and fouled out with like 6 or 7 points in that game. Then there was like, Cat went through like a 2-week stretch where he was just Andre Drummond, like averaging 14 and 13, but it was like, just rebound the ball. We're not going to call plays for you. And one of the games during that stretch was that Raptors game. Now, the night before that Raptors game, the Knicks played the Kings, who I will just remind everybody are 14-47. 2 weeks earlier, they got their 13th win against their 11th win against the New York Knicks. And then that was a close game going into the fourth quarter.
And they closed without Towns, right?
Right. So they closed without Towns. They had Mitch on the floor. I forget the 2 players. I think it was Deuce McBride and Mitchell Robinson didn't make the trip to Toronto the next day. And it was like, so we're losing 2 of their best defenders who were like important in the matchup against the Kings. They made like, Mitch isn't playing back to back, and Mitch played the first night. And it was like, we're not sending Mitch to Toronto the next day. And the Knicks are down 14 in the third quarter against the Raptors. And then to your point, just something flipped that they were just, I call it the not effing around crew from like the movie The Town, where John Hamm references.
Joe Mazzulla.
Right. So listen, he may be a psycho, but that movie's awesome. Yeah. Like the Knicks decided to flip the switch. And obviously in that game, they won 119-92. So like from that moment is really a line of demarcation for me for the rest of the league. There's a Pistons conversation that I'm just going to let play out in the playoffs because the Pistons have treated every game against the Knicks like it's the Super Bowl. But I look at that stretch, specifically that Raptors game, where it's like, okay, this is a team that knows what tier they're on and what tier, to your point, they look at other teams to be on. And I would worry if I were a Raptors fan that that's how the Knicks would look at it too. But it sounds like what you're saying, just make the playoffs and like win 1 to 2 playoff games. This will still be considered a successful season for the Raptors.
Yeah, look, the bars obviously move and fans will want to win. And I think Cleveland in particular, because again, I think fans put more weight into the season series matchup than like analytically we do, especially giving guys in and out of the lineup and stuff. The other part is like they have history with all these teams, and like Raptors fans and Cavs fans have a nice friendly rivalry.
The LeBron days, that's right.
Yeah, like the LeBronto shoe just dropped. Like we don't need to. I don't need to do that stuff again.
Right.
Obviously, like divisionally, there is a healthy distaste for the Celtics here. The Knicks weirdly like feel like we're the Raptors are the friendliest with. Like there's competition, but like they've traded together.
Right.
You know you guys took Bargnani off their hands.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Look, things are better.
You guys took Bargnani off their hands is an amazing sentence that was just said.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I look, people will want to win that series, and most importantly, you'll want proof of concept that like this starting 5 together and the couple bench pieces they have can do something, because again, there's not a lot of cap flexibility moving forward unless they make a trade or whatever. So you'll want to see some of that stuff. I just think, if you go back to October and you said, yeah, they're going to be the 5 or 6 seed. They're going to take a team that we thought was really good heading into the year. They're going to take them to 6 or 7. I think everyone would have been pretty cool with that. So I think even though they've performed well and like the vibes are high and stuff like that, I don't think you can move the bar too much, because like there's not a ton that's fundamentally changed. They've just been a little better in a lot of areas.
So this now leads me, because you talked about some trades that could get made, to talk about a recent trade that the Knicks and Raptors did make. And this is where we spend our check-in every time I have a Raptors content creator or reporter or person on to talk about Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, two former fan favorites, some still fan favorites. And we'll do how are the former Knicks doing? I do just need to, you said like the Bargnani trade. So there is a lot of consternation from a Knick fan of a certain age about the Carmelo Anthony trade. I was pro Melo trade because 6 months earlier, I was told we were getting LeBron James and he took his talents to South Beach. 6 months later, Knicks are like a fun 8 or 7 or 8 seed. And I was like, can we trade for a superstar, please? And like there was the lockout and some other stuff going on. I'm not litigating that, but I maintained like the Knicks were a 2 seed 2 seasons later. So like obviously they were able to build a team around Carmelo Anthony, but you had to be precise with your decisions. And then they traded for Andrea Bargnani, and that ended all competitive windows with Carmelo Anthony on your roster, apparently.
The best part of that too is like the Carmelo trade was so good for the Nuggets. And obviously, again, those Knicks Carmelo teams were fun. But like the trade was good enough for the Nuggets that it was part of how Masai got the Raptors job.
Right.
And then his first move was the Bargnani trade.
Right.
First big move. Yeah.
So the crazy thing, like, yes, they got Gallinari, they got Wilson Chandler, they got Raymond Felton, like they got the young players. It was 1 first-round pick and 1 swap. And like you trade a swap to a team that you also traded Carmelo Anthony, like you don't think that swap's going to matter. But because the Knicks had Andrea Bargnani the year of the swap, that ended up being Jamal Murray. So that's where
you know who the other
that comes into play.
Became?
Was it Saric? It was one other. No, it was Jakob Poeltl. It was Jakob Poeltl.
So there was a Saric pick that was in there, but eventually that pick moved around a bunch, and it was the Bargnani pick that then became Jakob Poeltl.
Yeah.
So that pick got moved. Like Jakob Poeltl's transaction page on Basketball Reference has a bunch of like pre-draft transactions, which I love that they show. Like that wasn't Jakob Poeltl at that point. That was just a hype. Like it could have ended up being Deontay Davis. Who knows? But it moved multiple times before the Raptors ended up using it. And then, of course, the Raptors traded Poeltl away. and then traded a bunch of picks to get him back. And Jakob Poeltl with quite the basketball reference transaction log.
I would say that initial Jakob Poeltl trade worked out very well for the Toronto Raptors because they traded him for Kawhi Leonard.
As well. Yes, and as we all famously call it, the Jakob Poeltl trade.
The Jakob Poeltl trade, exactly.
Not the Kawhi Leonard trade.
Okay, so Mayo Quickley and RJ Barrett. It seems like in my conversations with Esparhini and with you, with Raptors people that I end up talking to, like it doesn't seem like OG Anunoby's a Knick for the foreseeable future unless there's a Giannis sweepstakes, right? Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, it doesn't seem like there's that same commitment, but I guess want to ask you about this season. Like, how do Raptors fans feel about, and can we just start with RJ? Because I'm actually stunned that this isn't more of a, like, he's quite literally one of us playing for the Canadian national team and like grew up right around the corner, has obviously gone through some personal tragedy nearby. Like, how do Raptors fans feel about RJ Barrett these days?
Yeah, it's a mix because there is definitely a segment of the fan base, and I would think most people appreciate the local kid angle, how much he wants to play for the Raptors, how he's always the first national team guy with his hand up. And he's just a likable dude too. Like there's no drama. They have asked him to shift his role a bunch. And this is true of a handful of the top Raptors. Like everyone's usage rate is down this year. But RJ is the guy who, like, you get Brandon Ingram. Well, RJ's the guy who has to change his role the most, right? Because the ball is going to be in RJ Barrett's hands less. And so RJ's done a lot of good stuff this year. There was also a long stretch of the season where when RJ was not in the lineup, the Raptors just like could not score. The half court offense dried up, and RJ's ability to get into the paint and get to the rim is something that, like, the Raptors get a decent rim volume overall, but it's almost all assisted stuff. It's all lay it down in the dunker, make the pass that makes the pass, cut baseline when a double comes on Ingram. There's very little unassisted rim pressure for the Raptors, and RJ's the one guy who can do that. So, having said that, since he came back from the second injury this year, he hasn't looked great. So it's been really interesting to track like him and Quickley, where like it's kind of only been like only one of them's played well at a time. They've both probably, if you bring up just like the basketball card or whatever, they both probably had good seasons. Like RJ's been relatively efficient. Usage is down a little bit. Scoring's down a little bit. But he's been a little bit more efficient and, you know, has done everything teams at. Quickley, same kind of thing. But they've never been playing well at the same time. So that part's a little weird. As far as how people feel about RJ, I think there is just like a part of it is unfortunate that when you look at what contract everyone is on, what role everyone plays, and the fact that, like I just laid out, even though this team's good, nobody has designs that this is like a Eastern Conference champion level roster. So what's got to change? And they're capped out for the foreseeable future. RJ is the one guy that it's a shorter contract. Like him as a $29 million expiring next year could be really valuable in the summer, especially if you're willing to attach some draft equity to it to turn it into multiple players or to go the other way and level up for someone. So I think most people like RJ, the player. Everyone likes RJ, the person, and the Canadian hometown guy. But when you look at, you know, how you continue to build this thing, there are a couple ways you can look at it where he kind of feels like the odd man out. And it really doesn't have as much to do with RJ specifically as it does like the cap sheet and the way the offense is designed when you have Scotty Barnes and Jakob Poeltl already there and Brandon Ingram already there as well. Does that make sense? It does.
What the new CBA did was make us kind of rethink all these contracts that were given out just before, like the cap spike hit. And now,
like, if you're a max guy is still really valuable and a good rookie scale is still really valuable, but that, like, the tier between you're too good for the mid-level, but you're not good enough for the max, like, it still feels like that is the tier that's like pretty hit or miss and teams are uncomfortable with.
Right, which is where RJ falls. It's what Julius Randle.
It's where the entire Raptors roster, other than Scotty Barnes, is.
Well, so that's where I guess this brings up Quickley a little bit, but like Julius Randle dealt with this offseason where he came off he was looking to expand on a deal where I believe he extended for 4 years, 106, which was like a really good deal at the time in 2021. And then, he's thinking that he just watched Emmanuel Quickley in restricted free agent get 170. I've made 3 All-Star teams and 2 All-NBA teams. And so we had Bobby Marks come on the show that summer and basically say, if I were his agent, the Knicks offered him 3 for $100, I would take it. And the Knicks then said, we're going to trade you for Karl-Anthony Towns. And what contract does he end up getting from the Timberwolves? 3 for $100. So it's why I'm curious to see with RJ, who I flatly think, even as someone who was very okay with the trade when it happened, I think he's rehabilitated his value and his image, especially from where he was when he left the Knicks. But it sounds like you're saying to me that if he were to leave the Raptors this year, he would be matching salary again for the Raptors to potentially get better.
And it's possible it's it's both, right? It's like a matching salary, but also that team might free agency barely exists now, right? So if you get RJ with 1 year left on his deal and you're excited about extending him, that's a reasonable play if you're another team. The Raptors wouldn't be trading him because, they dislike RJ Barrett. It's that's their best path to changing what the roster looks like next year without being deep into the tax.
Right.
I don't think it would be a salary dump. I think the expiring nature of it opens up the amount of teams who might be willing to take it on. Let's say Giannis becomes available and the Raptors want to be players for him, right? I don't think it's realistic that the Raptors have the best package, but let's play it out. If you're the Bucks, $29 million for RJ does a big chunk of the cap math. It's expiring. So depending on what you want to do post Giannis, it leaves flexibility open, and he probably has trade value again at the trade deadline as a really good player who's expiring. So scenarios like that. And then there's, there are some scenarios if, I don't know, a team has more depth and wants to consolidate where, the chance to get RJ and then talk extension with him becomes attractive as well. Similar to what the Raptors did with Ingram, right?
Right. And just to bring the example of, again, what the Timberwolves did with Julius Randle, so that's where I end up being very fascinated with the futures of both of these players. Because look, the Raptors being good adds a fun wrinkle to what became the Knicks spinoff show of we had this attachment to Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, and then they got traded to Toronto, who wasn't trying to win immediately. So when you're done with the Knicks, go check in on how RJ and IQ are doing. And
it's kind of played out that obviously neither of these teams have won a championship and done the absolute, but OG's been really good and so team level worked fine for the Knicks. OG got paid. So individual level worked for OG. The Raptors are happy with how both of these guys have played. So it's worked fairly. You could go back and quibble, should you have traded OG for picks instead of players and done a bigger rebuild, whatever. But the players you got have been pretty solid. IQ got paid. So he's happy too. So if RJ gets the next deal, we've somehow done a win-win-win-win-win trade here. Which
across the board.
Which is so rare. RJ's just the only guy who hasn't got the payday yet.
Well, so the most important thing with Quickley, yes, he got paid, but he got the chance to start. He was just never going to do that under Tom Thibodeau, especially next to Jalen Brunson. There have been moments this season in particular that I've watched Mike Brown go to 3-guard lineups, and I'm seeing Tyler Kolek and Deuce McBride and Jose Alvarado share crunch time minutes with Jalen Brunson that I've been curious, would Mike Brown have started Emmanuel Quickley next to Jalen Brunson? Now, to Tibbs' credit, Quickley closed a lot with the Knicks as well. So it's not like he was against those lineups. He's just always preferred size. Tell me about Emmanuel Quickley. And I will say this. I do read some of the Twitter streets, and I did see some outcry against Emmanuel Quickley for a little bit when he was struggling. And then he had a 4-game stretch where he looked like Jalen Brunson for a little bit, or right-handed Jalen Brunson for a little bit. And then I guess I haven't checked in since then. So what's the latest relationship Emmanuel Quickley to Raptors fans?
He's been real good lately. So he he was underwater to start the year because people don't love the contract. And, Jamal Shed is one of the least efficient scorers in the league, but he plays with pace and he makes quick passes and he's better, on the ball defensively. So there have been a couple times this year where people were like, is Quickley better off like coming off the bench? The answer to that is no. Like Jamal Shed's just not there yet. And the Raptors need Quickley spacing so badly. But those conversations are far in the rear view. Over his last 16, he's averaging just over 20 a game, shooting 53% from the floor, 47% on threes. So really, really good. He's also putting up like almost 6 assists with like a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio during that stretch. So the Raptors are not using him as a traditional like pass first point guard. He spends a bunch of time off the ball. It's more about bring the ball up the floor, get off it quick, relocate. And they have improved in how they find ways to use Quickley as much as Quickley's improved. But within that, Quickley his finishing has gotten much, much better as the season's gone along. So if you remember his 2022-2023 with the Knicks, he was a really good finisher at the rim, and then it kind of disappeared. And it wasn't there last year either, but it's gone. It's turned around where he's like he's at a career high in terms of finishing at the rim this season. And the floater range stuff has been pretty good as well. Not quite as good as it was in New York in like his best times, but it's gotten pretty good. So that's been huge for the Raptors because, again, they don't have a lot of guys who can self-create and get to the rim. So him being able to improve a little bit as a finisher has been big. And then, I mean, you guys remember this, like he just does not turn the ball over relative to how much he has the ball. And some of that is like, okay, you don't make aggressive passes. You're pretty conservative, but not turning the ball over, especially in today's NBA where, the possession battle is so huge because every team scores 120 points a game. It's been pretty good. So I think like overall, this season doesn't look all that different from last year. You would say it's probably a slight improvement, but his last 15 or 20 games have been really, really good. Like that's what the Raptors, and to their discredit, they paid for the development that hadn't happened yet. But the last 15 or 20 games, that's what they thought Quickley could turn into. Defensively too, like he still gets like cooked pretty good at the point of attack, but the Raptors have designed their defense to protect around that with, for him, RJ, Ingram, Grady Dick, whoever. They do a lot of like anticipatory switching and helping and stuff where it's not that big a deal that Quickley gets beat at the point of attack because he's really good making those switches and being active when he gets off the ball and things like that. So like needs to get better there, can still improve the finishing, can still pass a little bit more. But the last 15, 20 games, easily the best he's looked as a Raptor.
It's what I always appreciated about Quickley too. Really, that the year he finished second in Sixth Man of the Year was him developing into a really good off-ball defender. Yeah, like taking.
And that wasn't there early on with Toronto. Like I remember what I saw with the Knicks and what we would talk about, or me and whoever on the Knicks would talk about when that trade happened. And I wrote about it a bunch before the trade because Quickley was a guy I had targeted as like, if the Raptors are going to go for players instead of picks, here's a list of guys that I think have another level to get to. And Quickley was on there. And I remember really liking his team level defense, his off ball defense. And then it just like wasn't there here initially. And now it's come back around. Maybe the system took some time to figure out. I don't know, but he's back to like, I would describe him as a high motor guy again, which I wouldn't have done last year, I don't think. So it's been good to see.
Well, the injury was also like he had the elbow injury, right? He had the injury that every pitcher then gets. Tommy John. Yeah. So it was like a UCL injury.
Yeah. And that was last year. And it was like a weird one where it was like day to day, but then he missed a bunch of time. And then they were not competing. They were not outright tanking, but they were not competing particularly hard. So he missed some time down the stretch too. But yeah, he's been pretty durable this year too. He's played 57 games.
Yeah, the Jazz should send that memo to Adam Silver. We're not tanking. We're just not competing right now. Yeah, that's what we call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Look, I will always find a way to root for Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. I don't miss the constant hive wars that went on in New York during that.
Luckily,
do those exist in Toronto at all?
They do. And like, there's. Scotty Barnes and Scotty Barnes has been unbelievable. He is worthy of having like his own Scotty FC or whatever. But that's a very loud hive. There's a pretty loud Ingram hive. I think there's no avoiding it online, like with any fan base.
Yeah.
I think I've done a good job curating my Twitter columns that like
Same.
during games, I don't like I'll get it sometimes, if I'm negative about it, like RJ, for example, again, good season overall, great guy. The first 10 games or so back from injury were pretty rough. And he's had some pretty notable defensive lowlights during that stretch. So you point that out. That's part of the job. That doesn't mean I dislike RJ Barrett or I'm packing his bags. It means he's had a bad 10 games. But then you're an RJ hater, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's just something that we all have to deal with, no matter the team or player. There's always going to be that. It's always like the biggest insult I can give to a player is like, you don't have that. Like Rudy Gobert is the best you can be without having a hive on Twitter.
Right.
That's the worst thing you can have as a player is like wrestling 101 is like the opposite of cheers is not booze, it's silence.
Yeah.
So if you don't have one of those hives on Twitter, you're in trouble.
Listen, all reaction is good reaction, right? We know that from the impression counting world that we live in these days. This, I guess, is now when I usually turn the pod over to my guests to ask, like, what's your biggest Knicks question? We haven't talked about OG Anunoby yet. So I don't know if those two things coincide, like your biggest Knicks question or your biggest Anunoby question. But the floor is yours. What are you most curious about with the New York Knicks and potentially OG Anunoby?
Yeah. I mean, OG's my guy. I love OG. I guess generally it seems like you guys are pretty happy with him. I guess so one of the talking points coming out of that trade from Raptors fans was that OG would finally get the league-wide respect he deserves for his defense, because he has only once made an all-defense team. Now, there was one year that he absolutely deserved it and didn't get in. Every other year, he probably missed too much time or just like wasn't established enough yet. So there's 2 years where like, I get it. But he probably should have more than one second team all defense at this point in his career. So I guess my question is like, have you noticed that happen? Like that OG's defensive reputation is stronger now? And if so, like, I know he's missed like 12, 15 games, but is he going to make all defense again this year, do you think?
So if the Knicks finish with a top 10 defense, he's eligible. Okay. He's absolutely going to make all defense this year. I don't see how he doesn't.
It's a farce that he only has one second team all defense when you like, it's been 9 years of like talking about him as one of the best wing defenders.
I specifically thought last year where he also like, do you have his basketball reference up? Like how many games did he end up playing last year?
He played 74 last year, which was
for
the career
Tom
high.
Thibodeau, like playing 74 minutes at the amount of 74 games at the amount of minutes per game that he was averaging last season, and being really the only defensive anchor because of the struggles that Cat and Brunson present when they're on the floor with you, because of really just how Mikal Bridges was used last year. He was brought in to be like the point of attack version, another version of Anunoby, where it's just come to find out that he's not OG, and the version that finished second in defensive player of the year that was in Phoenix does not exist anymore. And then Josh Hart goes through stretches where he's a good defender and then not a good defender. So it's like, we're leaning on OG Anunoby. Like, you are the guy that gets the hardest defensive assignment, and you might not get more than like 6 or 7 shots a game, depending on the opponent. Defensively, I think he's definitely earned a reputation. I was banging the drum with people that I knew had votes last year. Like, you need to put OG Anunoby on your all defensive ballots. If the Knicks end up, like I said, right now they're 8th. They end up 10th in defense this year, or even better, like 6th in defense this season, whether it be on NBA.com or Clean the Glass. I think OG, if he's eligible, has to make it at this point, you know? So I think that reputation, because he's on, I mean, no disrespect to Toronto, but like on a bigger American national scale, like the second biggest market that the sport has. I think it's on display and talked about as such, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. And it's going to be tough if, I don't have a vote. But like, if it comes down to Scotty Barnes or OG Anunoby.
That would be crazy.
You know the picture of like Wesley Snipes crying as he shoots? That's going to be me having to argue that OG is not all defense because it's Scotty Barnes' shot.
And that scene in particular in New Jack City, he shoots his brother. So you have to pick which brother you have to. Is it going to be my older brother, OG Anunoby, or do I have to my own one? It's not blood anymore because he doesn't wear a Raptors uniform, so I guess he's technically not your brother anymore. We love OG here. I will say his shooting slumps can be maddening. Him finishing at the rim is an experience every time. Contested is an experience every time. Like the breakaway, the pick sixes that he creates are really fun. You hit him on a fast break or a leak out, you just kind of have to wait until the play's finished, because either you have to worry about him actually making the basket, you have to worry about him going up with contact potentially coming. There's forever the memory of him in the playoffs leaking out on a fast break and then pulling up lane with a hamstring injury, which derailed the Knicks playoff chances that season. I will forever appreciate OG Anunoby, even if like sometimes he can go through shooting slumps that coincide with the Knicks struggles,
which is, it's so like, obviously this is just kind of how 3-point shooting is, but like for him to be a streaky 3-point shooter and then every year of his career, except for one, he's been between 36 and 40% on threes. Like it's been pretty consistent at the end of every year, but the ups and downs over the course of the year is tough.
I have to double check this, but his volume, look, it's gone up, I know, with the Knicks, maybe not per 36, because I mean, look, last year per 36 would have been lower than his average. But this year, I guess that should be my question, because the Knicks largely use him as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Like you're going to play off of Brunson, you're going to play off of Cat, even Josh Hart. And we're largely going to use you as like a guy that gets 6, 7, 8 3-pointers up each game. Which is good because, like you said, he makes 36 to 38 of them per game. Some rapid fire questions before I get to the most important question I'll ever ask you.
All right, let's do it.
So rapid fire, we'll start here. Number one potential East playoff opponent that you want to play because you think the Raps can advance.
Yeah, I mean, of the possible outcomes, I'll say Cleveland, because I think it's going to be Boston, Cleveland, or New York. It's hard to see standings wise another thing shake out. Boston is good anyway. If they get Tatum back, it's maybe just one too many guys to handle, even for a team that has some good wing defenders. The Knicks, I think there's a level of physicality and maturity that the Raptors just wouldn't be ready for yet, even if I think they do better than they have in the regular season series. So Cleveland's the spot. I know it's a little weird for the team that has Donovan Mitchell and James Harden to be like, oh yeah, I don't trust the Raptors' point of attack defense that much. Give me that matchup. But they've done some good things with Mobley and Allen in the past. I think some of their like schemey switching stuff can paper over some stuff. I wouldn't be confident in any of them, but I think I would be more confident in Cleveland than New York or Boston.
I just want to add the other option. They're not that far away from the 3 seed. So like if I said Cleveland or Philly.
Oh yeah. I guess 3.5 games. Yeah, I guess I would take Philly then, just because of the general, what Philly team are you going to see? Right. You know, like if you run into that team and Embiid's not 100% and Paul George is shaky coming back, Tyrese Maxey probably averages 50 points in that series, but you might be able to do enough
in 50
otherwise.
Minutes. Yeah. In 48 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And plus, like, that one's a fun one. Like the last time the Raptors were in the playoffs, they played Philly. They have Nick Nurse. They have Kyle Lowry, which would be, he would be doing all sorts of nonsense, I'd imagine. Not that he'd be playing much.
I was going to say that from the bench. Yeah.
Like, no, even, from the bench or like in the press wise, like suddenly he'd be the most chatty guy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Number one potential East playoff opponent that you don't want to play because you think losing will be embarrassing. Not that you're afraid of losing to, but like losing to this team will be embarrassing. It doesn't sound like this one exists, but I like asking it. Just
it would be Boston then, because you know there's just like, and I don't know how much all Raptors fans feel this way, or it's just me, and like there's the Jays Red Sox part of it that bleeds in, the Leafs Bruins part. I just like, I don't like losing to Boston team. Not that I'm on the team, but I don't like covering Boston winning. The game 7 from the bubble still sits wrong with me because I don't know. Boston would be the most annoying, I think.
Gotcha.
I mean, you're a Knicks fan. You know what their fan base is like.
I've heard. I'm also a Jets fan. Like I had to endure another Patriots trip to the Super Bowl. However, shout out to my friends at FANATICS Sportsbook. The hater bet cashed because the Knicks played the Celtics on Super Bowl Sunday and the Seahawks won. So that money line parlay worked out perfectly for me.
Perfect.
I'm a Mets fan. I come from a different league in that the Red Sox. Like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, you know? So like I get to also like the Jays are the same way. Like I root for the Jays in playoff games as well. So I understand where that comes from. All right, let's talk about that game. That game, ironically, Bill Simmons literally just talking to Zach Lowe today on their pod referred to game 1 against Indiana last year as that game for Knicks fans. Bill Simmons completely forgetting that he coined this phrase in 2007, and it's a bit that I've been using all season on the pregame pod. It's the game that you point to, and every fellow Raptors fan, you don't even need to add context. You just say that game. You're like, oh yeah, that's that loss that has caused me to look at sports differently since then. What do you consider that game for the Toronto Raptors?
So I don't know if this will be a universal opinion because the most heartbreaking finish itself is game 7 against the Nets when the Raptors were on the rise and they launched the We the North campaign. They weren't supposed to be good yet. They almost traded Kyle Lowry. And then they stumble into being this unbelievably fun team and they lose on like a buzzer beater gets blocked and they had drawn up the play on the wrong side of the floor and they were right there. But that was all, to me, that was all positive. Like that was, last season was so fun and it was a we're here statement moment. So, and I'm sure the 76er series for older Raptor fans from the Vince Iverson era, maybe there's one in there. But for me,
as a one, yeah.
For me, it's game 1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2018. So 2016, you're on the rise. You go to the Eastern Conference Finals. You push the Cavs to 6. Awesome series. Unbelievable year for the city because the All-Star game's here and you take Cleveland to 6 and LeBron takes a moment to like appreciate how good the crowd is in Toronto and stuff like that. 2017, you get another shot at them. You get swept. 2018, the narrative all season long is like the Cavs don't have it anymore. They're just not that good. By every metric under the sun, the Raptors are a way better team. And in game 1, buzzer beater goes up. They miss. They get like 5 taps at it at the rim and nothing drops. They lose by a single point in overtime. And I'm going to bring up the play-by-play. I should have done this before, but I'm going to read to you all the misses that they have at the end of this game. So this is the end of regulation. It's 105-105. Fred VanVleet misses a 3. DeMar DeRozan gets an offensive rebound. He misses. CJ Miles gets an offensive rebound. He misses. CJ Miles gets an offensive rebound. He misses. Jonas Valanciunas tries to tip it. He misses. So that's what? 5 shots in the last 7 seconds of a tie game. Goes to overtime and they lose. And I don't not believe in the psychological aspect, but I feel like we can't grasp it. You don't know until you know. That was the first time I ever experienced where like after a game, I was like, they're losing this series for sure. They're a better team, but they had lost to the Cavs 2 years in a row and 5 shots to win game 1 to go ahead on the Cavs for the first time. And it doesn't go. And then you lose it in overtime. You're done. And then they got swept. And that was the LeBron spinning the ball. LeBron's drinking wine. LeBron hits the wild winner over OG. Or that one was maybe the year before. Either way.
No. That was game 3 where he hits the runner or he's running out of bounds. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of bad stuff happens in that series. And then they absolutely blow them out in game 4. And that's the end of the DeMar, Dwayne Casey side of that era. So for me, it's game 1 of that series, second round of the playoffs, your third crack at the Cavaliers. You're better than them, but you can't literally it's the closest you can have in basketball to like the Rock is at the top of the hill. You're almost back down it goes. Bummer.
does the pain of that game, and I'm asking as somebody who wants the pain of game one against the Pacers to go away. Like, did the pain of that game go away with the championship the next year?
For the most part, there is still like a tiny bit of you never got to beat LeBron. Like, so obviously, look, it's the only championship the Raptors won. It's the only championship I've gotten to cover. If the Blue Jays come back next year and beat a team that's not the Dodgers, I'll be A-okay with that. The championship rules all. There is like a tiny part that is like you never did get your win back on LeBron, and it was right there that year.
Right.
But that doesn't make the championship less special, no. So you mostly get over it then.
And it's why I'm hoping the Knicks will be able to get over it, because
the best revenge is living well.
Right. So just like they're not going to be able to beat Halliburton this year. So they will have had to go through probably Cade Cunningham or the Celtics again, or whichever team they will have to. So there's hope for us Knicks fans that they can get over that game by just winning a championship the next season, like the Raptors did. Yeah,
I'll tell you this. If you win the championship this year, the game one will come up from time to time. You know, it'll come up way more. The championship.
Yeah. I hope you're right.
I talk about the Raptors 2019 title way more than I talk about game one of the second round of the playoffs against the Cavs in a season where they were out in the second round, you know?
There is a misery loves company thing going on here, but I also there's also a Knicks fans love to be miserable thing that seems to come up. But look, I'm sure you saw the video of when they beat Boston in game 6 to move to the conference finals, and just like what New York City looks like. Yeah. If you get that and it's an NBA championship and we get a whole summer of celebrating the Knicks, the city might not exist by the time like September rolls around. But
dude, you saw the footage from the parade here.
Yeah. Jurassic Park. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
pretty nuts.
It's not called Dundas Square anymore, right?
No, so Nathan Phillips Square is where the parade like ended
with the big Toronto sign, right? Yeah. I told you I dated a Canadian. I knew. Well, I told you off the air that I dated a Canadian.
Yeah,
so I know Ontario.
She goes to a different school. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Do I still know the provinces? Oh no, this is how we'll end. Do I know the provinces? Okay, so the territories at the top are Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut, or how do you pronounce it? Nunavut. How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, there's a T at the end. Nunavut.
Okay.
So we don't pronounce the second.
That's right. Nunavut.
We don't pronounce the second T in Toronto, but in Nunavut you pronounce the T.
Okay, so then it goes British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, right? Or did I miss one already?
No, you're good.
Okay. Then there's one before Ontario, Quebec.
Quebec's on the other side.
So there's the one I'm missing in between. And then there's all those little islands, Nova Scotia, and there's like a Labrador in there.
Newfoundland and Labrador. Yeah, it's all one place.
New Brunswick.
That's where my family's from.
Oh, okay. There you go. New Brunswick is one of them. I'm missing the province in between Saskatchewan.
And you're missing one of the little ones.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to get it. What are the two I'm missing?
Okay. Manitoba's the big one between
Manitoba. Man.
Not a lot there other than Winnipeg.
Okay.
And then PEI, Prince Edward Island, is the other little one.
Prince Edward Island.
Well, that's pretty good, man.
But listen, there's some talk about that game. That was that relationship. So I was able to remember something.
Yeah, buddy, I'm going to Vancouver on the weekend, and that's the home of that relationship. Too, so I know how you feel.
We've all been there. Thankfully, there are championships to look forward to, and I found mine. Thank you, Blake, for coming on this.
What a way to end it.
What a therapeutic way to end this edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. Before you get out of here, where can people find you and all of your work?
Yeah, Raptors shows daily wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're in Canada, it's on TV and radio here every day. And then come Jays season, you and I'll be talking Mets stuff, and I got that time slot just becomes a Jays show called Jays Talk Plus, which will be a lot of fun, but it'll be delayed by the Raptors making the playoffs this year, which is nice. It's nice. It's weird to start baseball late, but it's great. The reason for it is great, and it's that the Raptors are pretty solid this year.
Yes, for multiple reasons, I'm rooting for the Blue Jays to win this season. And for multiple reasons, I'm sure you're rooting for Bo Bichette to have a great season. We're both rooting for Bo Bichette this year, which will hopefully be a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Blake, as always, thank you for joining me. And thank you to everybody for tuning into another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. If you dug it, please head over to iTunes, Spotify, leave a 5-star rating and a review. Like this video on YouTube. Remember to subscribe. Follow us on all socials, Nick Film, SKOOL. Patreon, Substack, all our bonus content available. Links are in the description. I will be back tomorrow because the Knicks play the Oklahoma City Thunder on the second night of a back-to-back. So hopefully we get 2 wins, but hopefully I'll sign up for a split. I don't know which one I'd rather have, but hopefully you enjoy both of these episodes. Until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll speak with you soon. Peace. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Not available in all states. Terms apply. See the Fanatics Sportsbook app.